Welcome back to our conference, Immigration, Equal Protection, and the Promise of Racial Justice, the Legacy of Jean V. Nelson. We're looking forward to another rich discussion in our next panel. Just a reminder that CLE credit is available for this panel, so you will need to listen out for the CLE code, which our moderator, Professor Alina Das, will read out before the Q&A. And finally, a reminder to post your questions to our panelists. You can post them throughout the session and we'll gather them and send them on to our moderator, who will leave time at the end to respond to those. So again, a reminder, listen out for the CLE code, which our moderator will read out prior to the Q&A. Okay, and now I'll hand the time over to Alina Das to begin this discussion. Alina.
Thank you so much. My name is Alina Das, and I am one of the co-directors of the Immigrant Rights Clinic at NYU Law School. I'm a professor who, with my students, represents and partners with communities in the struggle against what we view as a fundamentally anti-Black racist immigration system. And in many ways, although I'm a professor here at NYU, I am also a student of the four incredible leaders we're about to hear from today. And so we're so grateful to the conference organizers for creating this space and putting this panel together. The focus of the conference, as many of you know, is about the legacy of Jean V. Nelson. But Jean is not just about a lawsuit, it's really about a movement. And it's a movement that's led not by lawyers, but by the community. And ultimately, as you've heard in discussions of this case, the law and the court itself assumed that there was non-discrimination, even when the community and the people knew that the very foundations of immigration law are discriminatory. And that's why community organizations and the organizers that you will hear about and hear from today have never really relied on the courts to solve their community's problems or to meet their needs. So to hear more about this and the broader work ahead, we're joined by four incredible community leaders who will speak about their struggle for justice and their vision for the future. So we have with us Marleine Bastien, Executive Director of the Haitian Women of Miami, also known as FAN, which was founded in Miami in 1991. We have Gregoria Flores, Executive Director of Garifuna Community Services, which was founded in 2014 with offices in New York and New Orleans. We have Nana Jamfi, Executive Director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, or BAJI, founded in 2016 with organizing committees in New York, Georgia, California, and Arizona. And we have Amaha Casa, founder and executive director of African Communities Together, or ACT, founded in New York in 2013. So in our pre-conference planning, it was clear that these leaders really had their eyes on the big picture. So I'm going to pose a two-part question that they each will answer, and then we'll create some space for these leaders to respond to each other before we open it up to all of your questions. So the two-part question that we'd like for everyone to start with is this. In this moment, as you look back to the past and forward to the future, what are the big issues that you and the communities you organize alongside are wrestling with? And in a nation that's steeped in anti-Blackness and xenophobia, where do you see the path forward? So with that, we're going to start with Marleine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonsoir. You can all hear me, right? I'd like to ask you to join me in a tap-tap in Little Haiti. And Little Haiti is located in the city of Miami, which I titled the City of the Two Extremes, where significant wealthy folks live side by side, with people who are very poor with very limited income. Some of the issues that we've been dealing with in Florida, which is one of the most probably difficult states to organize in, and then we've been organizing and building a movement there since 1991 for some, but for me since 1981. And I'm gonna ask you, before I really dive into my presentation, to bear with me because my mind is not really with you. I'm sorry, I apologize, because we know that early voting is going on in Florida. And there is a very high level of voter suppression. So while I'm trying to communicate with you, to interact with you, to engage with you, my mind is out there because there are grave assaults to our most sacred right, which is our right to vote in Florida right now. And we have about 30, uh, you know, uh, canvassers and poll watchers out there to make sure that people's rights are protected. So forgive me if I look frazzled, if I don't make any sense today. So what are some of the issues that we've been grappling with that for the past few years and, you know, moving forward? If this presentation was held probably 3 months ago, not even 6 to 9 months ago, I would say immigration first. But since the pandemic, which is a crisis problem multiplier, I would tell you it's employment and underemployment. I've been living in this state in the US since 1980 when I've never seen such unprecedented level of misery because the state of Florida has been rigged by the previous governor. And then even though the state received a lot of money, you know, as in pure stimulus package, stimulus dollars, federal stimulus dollars, most of our people, most of our small businesses have not been able to access these resources. So this is a big issue for us. And as a result of the pandemic, of the unprecedented state that we are living in, we have a high level of people. A lot of them are downstairs right here in our center because FAM is a one-stop center that provides services and organizes at the same time. We have a lot of them downstairs. Every day they line up because they cannot pay their rent. I must let you know, advise you that, or share with you that even before the pandemic, how there was a big, huge housing crisis in Florida. So the pandemic has just exacerbated, you know, this situation, and then it's brought it to a state of crisis, high level of crisis, where we have thousands and thousands unable to pay their rent, and then homeowners who will probably lose their homes. And even though the state of Florida, interestingly enough, you know, has received a lot of resources to reach out to these folks, those we serve, those we organize with on a daily basis. But like I said, few of them have access because what we've gotten really is the crumbs. All the resources have been going to the big corporations and big businesses. And in addition to the housing crisis, climate gentrification. In the midst of the pandemic, we have, and this continue, you would say that these huge developers who come from all around the world, right, to push people out, to secure, to buy our lands and buy our homes and push businesses out, you'd think that they would take a few steps back. But guess what? They are actively working. And even while we are trying to help people deal with this pandemic that is killing so many, the developers are meeting, inviting us to meeting to make sure that they can, you know, get people out in the midst of the pandemic. In addition to high unemployment, in addition to the housing crisis, in addition to climate gentrification, which is another problem, we have immigration. And in the middle of the pandemic, we have to deal with thousands and thousands of families, 300,000 TPS recipients who are facing deportation early next year, 800,000 dreamers who are facing deportation, and 11 million undocumented. Many of them live in the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, for example, over 40% of the TPS recipients live here. So we have people while dealing with this pandemic, trying to find ways to deal with this pandemic, they have to think about packing their bags and then wondering how they are going to do it. How are you going to be asking them to pack 30 to 40 years of their lives in suitcases? So how are we helping our community, our Black and brown communities? How are we helping them deal with these big issues? How? We organize them, of course, regularly. we try to give them the tools to contribute to their own empowerment and development. But we realize that it is not even enough right now. It is not enough. It is not enough. When we look at what's going on in the political landscape nationwide, when we realize what's happening with our vote suppression nationwide, when we realize what's happening to the Supreme Court with our Supreme Court nominee, when we realize what's happening with the rise of these extreme rights organizations nationwide, we realize that we have not only to organize locally, we also have to partner, and which is what we've been doing at FAM, with legal organizations such as the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Poverty Law Center, and other organizations to help us legally. We also, since the death of George Floyd, we found in Florida 4 young Black men hanged. We also need to organize to make sure that communities are protected, right? They protect themselves. We are trying to get folks to embrace the idea of community policing to make sure that they protect their children, because we see a rise in the targeting of young Black men and even women since the death of George Floyd. And that is of great concern to us. And in the case of the Black Lives Matter movement, it is our position that we need to continue to enforce it, to support it, to find a way to link the different struggles nationwide, because we realize that systemic racism, even though we can statewide, we can address it statewide, but we will not make an impact unless we really link the struggles everywhere. And then looking forward, we need to find a way. We need to find a way to empower the communities of color and disinvest in all the police departments and invest in our schools, invest in programs for the youth, close the school to prison pipeline, invest in small businesses. Many of our constituents, of our members, lost their jobs, lost their businesses. They were at risk before the pandemic, but as I indicated, the pandemic has exacerbated their problems tenfold. Work with our legal partners to sue the state of Florida, for example, and the different states as they try to trample on our rights. But most importantly, while this country is voting, while millions have already voted, we must invest in local elections, in elected offices, because we realize that, yes, we will continue to organize, we'll continue to fight back. Yes, we've joined lawsuits around the nation, but local elections matter. Elections have consequences, and local elections, we realize through our strategic planning, local elections also have consequences. We need to really educate our members through our systemic organizing to understand that they need to elect people who will work for their interests and not the opposite. So locally, we continue to organize. We continue to address these issues that I discussed. The biggest issues I see is, human rights, the continued assaults on our human rights, on our civil rights. And then we need to link our struggle nationally so that we can uphold the basic principles upon which this nation was built, which is the principles of fairness and equal treatment for all.
Thank you so much, Marleine. Gregoria, same question to you. And Gregoria, if you wouldn't mind unmuting.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, my name is Gregoria Flores from Garifuna Community Services. I'm one of the founder of the organization. The organization started in 2014 here in New York, but we start opening the branches. We have already the one in New Orleans. But before me come to United States, I was the president of OFRANE, that's a Garifuna Black organization in Honduras. I was a president for 14 years. And that was a hard part for my life when was take because the government in Honduras send the police to kill me. That's the same thing doing all the time about with our people. No, our leaders in our community, they start being defenders our territorially, our lands, but they suffer persecution. That's permanently situation in Honduras. So that's the reason I came to United States in 2006 January, and I seek political asylum. So now I have almost 16 years living here in America. I'm continuing working with my community, with the Garifuna community. So when I saw the question and I read it in English and translate it to my mind in Spanish and to Garifuna to really understand what's the really mean that questions. And I saw pain, I saw suffering for family members, especially in last few days. No, last year we lost almost from 2019 to 2020. We lost more than 29 leaders in different Taos community was killing. Some of them was kidnapping. That's the situation happening right now in my community, Triunfo de la Cruz. Our president, Snyder, and 3 other leaders was taken July 18 from a community during the COVID-19. And in the times, no one can circulate regularly. Only the police that was allowed to be get a circulation in that time during from 12 o'clock in the midnight up to 6 o'clock in the morning. Our president was take out between 5 o'clock in the morning up to 6 o'clock in the morning. We're struggling about that situation. It's not from today. I was remembering when I saw the material I have to speak about today. That was a material I'm writing in 2005. I'm writing May 24, 2005, and the May 30, I suffered the 10th against my life. So that information was translated and made public May 2019, day before me get that situation, me get through that situation, was they trying to kill myself. So it's not something in the past, is actual. When I just speak a few hours ago, like maybe an hour ago, with Clara Flores in Triunfo de la Cruz. And she told me the DIP, that is one of the police organization, they went to the community and they take the body for the one of our leaders was killed in 2000 and 2004. Jorge Castillo was killed, but 27 shots. They take him and they put in the tree, and like we call in Spanish piñata. It's something in the birthday. The parents put in the tree, and the children come and fight with to take the candy. So that's the same way they took my brother. So long story making short. So day after today, they go and take the body without our knowledge. They not even ask the leader in the community if they can do that, or they can somebody be part of that situation. But they going they going happen to us. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry about that. Whew. Okay, coming back. So we saw people suffering. We saw mothers crying for children. We saw community crying because of leader was taken. 3 months after, we don't have no information about that. We don't have nothing about. We're trying to make the commission, and we ask the system, we ask the investigation, the person dealing with the investigation, we ask to often be a part of the investigation because we have a right to be a part of the investigation. The family had the right to be a part of the investigation, and they decline our seeking. So I think the community are very appropriate to fight our rights because in the beginning in Honduras, uh, we don't get no rights, and we making that denounce, making the we making the march demonstration, we're making the doing the demonstration in the city and the capital city with the another indigenous peoples, but we not get no answers. We cross all the justice system in Honduras, and we not get answer, we not get investigation, we not get answer, we not get nobody to send to us. We recognize you at the land where you live is your property because you and one of the native people living in Honduras. We have 9 indigenous people living in Honduras. Uh, and no right for us. So we cross the land, we come to international, and we get a denounce, and we win the fight against the Honduras government. But right now they not allowed to do what the human rights court, the resolution D in 2015 for Triunfo de la Cruz and Punta Piedra. So we're still fighting in that. So when we come here to United States and we saw the black people rights, and then I even call us like black people, they just say people of colors. What color you got? I don't know. Because it's always it's despective when they tell us the people of color because we're not people, we're the people of color. It's the second grade or third grade of the people. And when we saw that census 2020, we don't have no right. We don't have the quality health. We don't have the quality education. We don't. It's not recognized. No, not recon. Yeah, they not recognize. So Garifuna people is living in America from the 30s. So it's. I think it's more than an. I think it's more than an 50 census they do. Is now when we're fighting to be accounted, we speak for our people to be accounted. So we're trying to see forward about the opportunity, about to continue and says the black people life is mother, Garifuna people life is mother. We start fighting because we know we have the right for our lands in Honduras, in Guatemala, in Nicaragua, in Belize. And we have the right to live. We have the right to be subject for our development, like people and like black people when we are like a Garifuna. So I think my time is over. It's good to be with you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And as you were speaking, it's a reminder of really honoring both the resiliency of all of the communities that you're working with and the recognition of how much healing needs to happen as part of this movement work. So thank you for sharing that. Nana, over to you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Oh, sister, you gave us so much. Both of you, Marleine and Gregoria, gave us so much to think about, and the work that we have to do, what we go through in our own countries. often as a result of US imperialistic policies, and then almost going from from the frying pan into the fire once we get to the United States, especially with the immigration policies that we're dealing with now. So just want to thank you so much for lifting that up, lifting all those issues up. I want to thank you, Alina, and thanks to the NYU Law School and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and all who helped to put this fabulous conference together. Thanks also to my comrades on this panel, really humbled to be here with you. And thanks to those of you who have joined us for this discussion. I want to bring greetings from Baji. We are the largest Black-led immigrant rights, racial justice organization in the United States, advocating, educating, and organizing on behalf of the roughly 10 million Black immigrants, refugees, and our families here. We also work with multi-generational African Americans to fight for racial, social, and economic justice. We actually started in 2006. And at this point, we have offices throughout the United States, and also work with our partners and other Black sibling and immigrant rights organizations to push for power to the people. And we know, as you brought up, Alina, that immigration policy is a racial justice issue. Part of the work that we end up doing, not, I'm saying we, not just Baji, but Black immigrant folks, is often reminding both our racial justice village and our immigrant rights village that for us, we stand at that intersection and we can see how those two worlds connect. And much of it is in the context of human rights, right? Which is taking it to the next level. But when we look specifically at United States immigration policy, we see that it is rooted in this false narrative that the United States is a white ethno state, right? This idea that when we say American, which is semi-insulting in itself, Maria Makaba says USians, I like that better. But when we say American, people automatically think of like Ken and Barbie, even though what America produces in terms of culture is often rooted in Blackness. That's not the image that people have. And that is on purpose. That's the narrative that has been put out by the United States, even though the United States has never been a white country, right? When the Europeans came here, the colonizers came here, there were people already living here who are not white. And then they brought millions of kidnapped Africans from the continent here, and sometimes through the Caribbean, who were Black and not white. But the insistence on having this white ethno state, or at least the perception, requires an engagement in a constant attack on Black communities in particular, but obviously on Indigenous communities, as well as other communities of color, that keeps us in a state of sort of keep them down, lock them up, keep them out, push them out, which we must oppose. Anti-Blackness and chattel slavery in particular is about the dehumanizing of otherness. And so as we in this country, in terms of policy, begin to define who is the other is, by its very nature, Black people, right? And so the dehumanization of Black people is a core tenet of white supremacy, and immigration policy in the United States reflects and provides the narrative about Black people that allows that to continue. And so when we look at what we're confronting, and there's so many things, I really want to focus on the things that I see coming, sort of directly out of this rooting in anti-Blackness and foundation with chattel slavery. And so one of those, some of what we're dealing with are policies that are restricting our access to social, economic, civil, and civic rights, right? So whether that's access to healthcare, to housing, to economic relief, to work in worker protections, to be counted in the census, right? And to be counted towards apportionment, to vote with ease. Many of those issues that Marleine already spoke to, and so I won't go into more detail with that. But clearly the enslaved African was prevented from doing these things. And the idea is to continue to have that be the case. Policies that limit or exclude Black migrants from permanent relief and protections. And, we talk about TPS, and there's even conversations now about, should we do a Cameroonian TPS and push for that? And so organizationally, in terms of Baji, our position is enough of the temporary protective status. Let's provide permanent protections for all of the folks that are in need. And in particular, of course, we're focused on Black folks that are in need. So this thing where that it gets set up where people have to look over their shoulder every year or every 2 years or every 3 years to see, will they have to, as Marleine pointed out, pack up 40 years and put it into a suitcase. Let's end that. And let's talk about looking at immigration and migration as what it is, a right to human mobility, and seeing it as the administrative as opposed to a criminal law enforcement oriented endeavor. And looking at that, the criminalization of Black migrants for us is really where we see this intersection of racial justice and immigration policy play itself out the clearest. Looking at policies that criminalize and cage, and how we end those policies and dismantle the systems that allow those policies to continue. Criminalization in this country, as we know, is based squarely upon the effort to keep enslavement going, to keep the enslavement of Black people in particular going by another name. And, we've seen, we've read about it, we've seen the documentaries and the films about it, and we know that that's what it is. And criminalization in this country is effected through what I like to call cops in cages, right? So when we're looking at the policies that we need to bring to an end and that we're confronting, we're talking about policies that invest in and grow the carceral systems, whether those systems be detention centers, whether they be deportation systems, whether they be local jails, or whether they be state prisons. We need to abolish all of those systems and to end this continual putting of money, even if it looks like a positive thing, into those systems. So when we talk about better training for ICE enforcement, better training for local law enforcement, we've already seen, some of us have been in this game for 30 years, and we've had this conversation over and over again. There's no training people out of a white supremacist institution, right? When people talk about law enforcement is being infiltrated by white supremacy, we always have to point out that no, law enforcement is white supremacy. That is what it's the basis of law enforcement. And so it's not an infiltration. The folks who aren't white supremacists, they're the infiltrators, right? And so it's important to recognize that, so that we understand we're not looking for cages where they serve Wolfgang Puck and Bed and Body soap. That's not what we're looking for. It's not the conditions of caging. It's caging itself that is torture. It's not the conditions of enforcement. It's enforcement itself that is a problem. And so we are pushing with our partners to abolish all forms of the carceral system, which include surveillance, as well as the physical instruments of walls and cameras and all of these biometric systems, all of these things that keep folks in a state of dehumanization in terms of how they're being treated with respect to their desire to migrate. And we should look at the policies and push back against those policies that allow for the deportation of people. There were people after enslavement, when folks were allegedly freed, that decided that they wanted to leave. They had had enough and they wanted to leave, and we can't blame them. But there also were really big pushes by white supremacists in this country at the highest level to deport Black people. Basically, now we have all these Black people. In some places, the ratio of Black to white is 10 to 1. If everyone is free and we give everyone this citizenship and do this reconstruction thing, we're going to be overwhelmed, especially in the Southern and some Midwestern states. And so let's get rid of them and let's deport them and let's get them out of here. Right. And so when we talk about what we see now in immigration policy, we'll always be able to find a thread that, in terms of harmful immigration policy, we'll always be able to find a thread that goes back to how this country wanted to address its so-called Black problem, right? And so we certainly want to push back against the deportation of folks and call for not a 100-day moratorium, but an actual ending to the process of deporting people, an ending to putting people on planes, even outside of the COVID pandemic, and sending them back. And so we're asking and hoping that more people will join in that conversation about the ending of detentions, the ending of deportation, the abolition of local law enforcement and local caging in the effort to make sure that we are all free. And then I want to add, lastly, with respect to this criminalization piece, also ending the additional crime. So we need to repeal the 94 crime laws. We need to repeal the 96 crime laws, but there's a whole bunch of other laws that folks are in the process of creating. And we need to stop that, to stop trying to criminalize our way through difficult questions, and instead have the conversations, speaking to the folks who are most vulnerable and most impacted, and working together to figure out how we address some of the issues that we have normally just addressed by locking people up and deporting people out of the country. We need to make migration an administrative process that will reduce, if not eliminate, the need for the criminalization, cops and caging way of operating. And in terms of looking forward, we really need to think about a grassroots cross-movement building work that we should be doing, and not just in this country, but including folks in the global South, that is based on human rights as a standard, as opposed to just the United States civil, and constitutional rights, and highlighting abolition as the unfinished project that still needs to be finished. Those are the ways forward as we push back against the policies that harm Black people in the United States, whether Black migrants or multi-generational African Americans, remembering that, as we always say, when Black people are free, everyone will be free. Thank you.
Thank you for that vision. Amaha?
Thank you. It's always a privilege to listen to my sisters and colleagues and comrades, and be grounded in the stakes of the struggles that we're engaging in and that we're talking about today. My name is Amaha Kasa. I'm the executive director of African Communities Together. We are a membership organization of immigrants from Africa and their families. I've been wrestling with this question about sort of where are we, looking back and looking ahead at this particular historical moment, and thinking about it through the lens of our members' experiences over the past 4 years, and their aspirations as well as their fears for the years that come. I think I'm thinking about this, the audience for this and who we're in conversation with, and thinking back to law school. And one of the things that I heard all the time as a first year law student is you got to see the forest for the trees, right? It's this idea that you're going to have sort of facts, thrown at you right and left. And the point is to try to look for the system, look for the order that makes sense of them all. And I feel like that's been the experience in some ways of the last 4 years for those of us who are struggling with and in immigrant communities, right? Every day we would sort of wake up, turn on our phone and see what had happened that day, right? A new ban, a new assault on the right to seek asylum, a new attack on due process rights, a new escalation of enforcement. And it got to be just overwhelming, right? It was hard to see, kind of to make sense or see, what the pattern was, because we were just so caught up in all the trees and, that were the immigration law and policy under the Trump administration, and this kind of historic assault on the foundations of that system that happened over the past few years. And I found myself turning back to kind of the forest, or the way that I make sense of immigration law and policy in this country generally. And it's connected to some of the themes that Nana was talking about. We sometimes make the mistake of talking about exclusion, as if the goal of immigration law, of xenophobes, of conservatives on immigration issues, is to restrict immigration and to sort of maintain things as they were, to actually keep people out. That's never actually been the goal of restrictionist immigration policy. If you wanted to do that, then what you would do is attack the ability of people to work, and make it impossible for people to work and to earn money. But our political elites in this country have always been very clear that if they were to do that, then the economic engines of this country would grind to a halt. Without Black and brown labor, the United States doesn't have economy. Without extraction of wealth from communities of color, there is no U.S. economy. And so, but what immigration policy has often been singularly focused on is making use of Black and brown labor, without allowing people to have the social and economic power to bargain and improve their wages and get a decent standard living in exchange for their labor, and the civic power to vote, to participate in democracy, and to shape the future of this country. And so if you look at the struggle of the whole history of this country, but escalating over the last few years, that is at stake, is whether the communities of color, which are becoming a majority in many places, will be full citizens, full participants in American economy, society, culture, and politics, or whether we will remain in that second tier, second caste that Gregoria was referring to earlier. And you see that in Charlottesville when people were chanting, Jews will not replace us, right? When white supremacists were chanting that, they were talking about the Jewish role in advocacy for refugee resettlement. That was the fear, was refugees are going to replace in the political, meaning participate, integrate into the society. And that was most clearly expressed in the shithole country slur that Donald Trump, leveled at our homelands, at the countries of our birth. Why do you want people from these shithole countries when you should be having Western Europeans? So that's the stakes, and I think that people like Stephen Miller and A.G. Barr and Trump himself have been crystal clear on those stakes, and it's been consistent across every area, from locking up and locking out asylum seekers at the southern border, from undermining the independence of immigration courts and destroying due process for asylum seekers, from banning Muslim ban, the African ban earlier this year, and even in the way that this administration has thrown sand in the gears of immigration benefit processing and made it harder or impossible for people to do things like get their green card, get their work authorization, get their citizenship. So we've had a very coordinated and deliberate assault. And what has the response of the movement been? Some of it, especially the most high profile incidents like the caging of kids or the separation of family, has orchestrated, has engendered a mass response. But some of the most dangerous, most pernicious manifestations of this attempt at political and economic resegregation have really gone under the radar. And for me in particular, I think the immigrant rights movement has failed to lead on future flows. What are the avenues for people to migrate to the US legally? So refugee resettlement has been slashed from about 100,000 to less than 15,000 per year. That is a massive loss for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of families seeking an opportunity to emigrate to this country legally. The diversity visa program, which has been a bargaining chip for Democrats and Republicans alike, enables 55,000 people to immigrate to this country legally every year. In 2 years ago, 12 million people around the world applied for the DV lottery. The Trump administration put in a rule, which my organization was part of a lawsuit to challenge, and we're still challenging it, that just said, in order to even participate in this process, you have to have a passport from your country of origin. Even if it is expensive in your country of origin won't issue a passport without a travel itinerary. No matter what, you have to have a passport. That rule alone dropped participation in the diversity visa lottery from 12 million people per year to 5 million people per year. In Africa, the rate was cut in half. Think about that, 7 million people every year for whom the door to legal migration was slammed as a result of these rules. So I think when I think about our members who are in temporary protected status, our members who are undocumented, our members who are seeking to become citizens, we need a comprehensive strategy. And part of that strategy needs to be a strategy to enable people to bring their family to migrate here legally and to turn this threat of replacement into a reality of integration, full integration into American culture and society.
Thank you so much for that. And as you all saw from the chat, we are asking people to start posting their questions. And for those of you who are seeking CLE credit, the code, I believe, is blue, the color blue, that you'll have to enter at the link that's available in the chat for participating in this. So thank you all for now generating your questions. As we collect those questions, I'm struck by the synergy really between all of the comments that you all made. And I wanted to give you all a chance to comment on that and where you see synergies in each other's comments, common challenges and opportunities. And I will just say that it struck me in listening to you that we're really seeing how difficult the challenges are, right? We are seeing for Black communities and Black immigrant communities in particular, how much the struggle has been about survival, as it always has, about being particularly hit hard by COVID, by the policies that affect us as human beings, that Black immigrants are really suffering on the most basic level. At the same time, the dreams that you've articulated for the future, the vision for what we want to achieve, what allows communities to thrive, is a beautiful vision. And so part of what I'm wondering is, as you've heard each other speak, and as we may or may not be at a time of change, possibly change into a certain degree, right? Not the revolutionary change we want, but a possibility where more demands can be made. What you see those demands needing to be at this moment? Where do we take ourselves from this this time of intense struggle into the futures you're describing for Black immigrant communities? And anyone, please feel free to jump in as we collect the question.
I'm not gonna answer which is ridiculous, but because I think that, you know, I've sort of laid out what I was thinking and or what we've been thinking in terms of criminalization. But I really would love, Sister Gregoria, if I can impose upon you just to give us a couple of thoughts that you have about what folks can be doing here in the United States in terms of demands around the Garifuna and that struggle in Honduras, because we know that we have many Garifuna from Honduras that have attempted to come in this country, found it really difficult, and you know, a lot of restrictions. And so what can we do to be of assistance on this end?
Maybe I'm gonna be answer the question, but I need to add something in says the immigration, because when we saw the the exodus, the inducing exodus coming from Honduras starting 2013, and in 2013 and 2014, the 78% of the person coming in the exodus is a Garifuna woman with her children, because that was a strategy for the international development to take all people from the Garifuna community. That's a reason why. When you put together one family they come in legal to United States, they get in visa to come legal with her family. If that woman then I get the signing authorization for the parents, it says man or woman, those children then have been moved from Honduras. But when they come crossing the border up to south border from United States, they don't need no authorization to cross the Honduras border up to Nicaragua, to Guatemala, and the Guatemala border to Mexico, and the Mexico border to United States. So they give us the clue is a part of the plan to bring all those people from the Garifuna community. That uh, they not calculate something. They be another members of the another people from Honduras. They came from the city after the 2014, 2015. They came in from Salvador. They came in from Guatemala. So they say, okay, that's too much. So we have to stop that. But the beginning, there was a plan to move everybody from the Garifuna community lands. So that's the reason Garifuna Community Services start here. Because when we see what was happening, and they say all those women, all those men coming with her children, all those families coming and living here, because we have to start founding our people living in the park, sleeping and living in the park. Uh, Without the shelter, living in the shelter of the commercial buildings, living on the roof with her children here in New York. So the church, the different kind of the church and organization and the police call us to say, we have some people here, they say it's from Honduras, but they not speak English, they not really speak Spanish, but they not really understand what we're asking them in Spanish. So can you please help us with that? So that's the reason we say, so it's very important to we start cap our people. Besides that, another 3 or 5 families, they go outside to my building and knock the ring the bell for the building. And I was coming out to go to my medical appointment, and they asked me, "Oh, Gregoria, we was looking for you because somebody tell us you was living in this building, and we need you to help us, like as you working with us in Honduras, because I want to show you, we want to show you something." So they showed me the uncle bracelet they have it in her uncle, and bringing the yellow envelope with the information, all the information in the envelope that was in English. That person, they don't understand what they sign, what they have, what they bring together. After that, we start looking that situation in the different churches, and the different pastor call me. And so that's the reason we start Garifuna Community Services. And we always told to lawyers and the organization, that people is not, the really reason is not because if he's poor, it's because of that was moved from her land. They go through the city, and the city they got crashed with the maras, and they move from there. They move from there, and they get the information telling them, if you go to United States, you will have social security number, you will have a green card, you will have a this, you will have a that one, and those people come here. And after they come here, it's the situation becoming more difficult. They coming more hard because first they not speak English. They don't know the system here. They know they have to find a lawyer, but what kind of the lawyer that family needs? They need a lawyer with immigration, but that lawyer have to work a human rights situation because the real situation is the suffering they have back home from her right. Can be domestic violence, can be because they lost her land, because the Hispanic people came, the state sent the Spanish people to live in this community territory and move the Garifuna people from there because there's not the way when we live as a Garifuna is different where the other part of the city used to live. So they came in crash and that situation came in being the first. And when they get here, they know because I go through the asylum system because when I came here, I seek asylum. So I go through, I buy the experience. I always say I buy that experience because when you go through that situation like this, you have to learn. You have to learn. And in my case, I was helping my lawyer to write all the story and to look for all those people that was witness about what they happened with the Garifuna people in Honduras as an organization, Human Rights First, Right Action, the different kind of the organization working with us to come to be a witness about that situation. So that was more easy for me to translate my experience to my community, to start writing her story and build the Garifuna Community Services and helping and teaching everybody how to build her story before they go to the organization because the organization, they don't understand what's really happening about the Garifuna cases, what is behind, what is the real situation behind all those cases. So the immigrant, in 6 years, we working with, as a Garifuna Community Services, we saw thousands and thousands of cases. And we know all those people then not be win that. Especially now, immigration in the United States is was a criminalized. And
Yeah.
when the asylum people, they go to be a criminalized, you have to be in the jail or you have to be in the city as a jail. And that's a situation happen. A lot of time, bus driver call us because it's especially in the beginning, and the subway and the bus, the anchor bracelet, they lost the charger and they say, call your agent, call your agent, call your agent. And the people living in the city, it's not normal to you hear from somebody as a robot saying, call your agent, call your agent. Or stay still when you're there. The police, they be coming 15 minutes. That was happening in the buses. That was happening in the subway. That was happening in the hospitals. And that was and that was a strange experience we have with our people. And that's the reason why Garifuna Community Services exists, and we're expanding the Garifuna Community Services to Texas, to New Orleans, because the situation is the same. And day by day, they being so strong. That's casa. Has a say. And when they speak about that situation, that was very important to me to go back and speak a little bit about the struggling that Garifuna people living here right now, when they came in the process and when they living here as trying to be the new American population, and with a lot of the stigma they have right now, but it's completely different 16 years ago when I came. So the real situation happened right now.
Thank you for that. And I think it really, the Garifuna community's experience more recently with when I remember New York City, when many people were coming and seeking asylum, it reminded me much of what we talked about with Jean of Haitian immigrants being treated differently than Cubans during the time. Asylum seekers were placed on those ankle shackles at far higher rates than other asylum seekers. And so the anti-Blackness just repeats itself over and over again. And that leads to some of the questions that people have posed in the Q&A that hopefully we can have a chance to answer in our remaining few minutes. One of them had to do with asking all of you to describe the way your organizations have experienced anti-Blackness and immigration. And reading the question, I actually wasn't sure if the questioner was referring to the immigration system in terms of its laws and policies, or the immigrant rights movement, which itself has adopted anti-Blackness in many instances, both in terms of erasing Black communities from the discussion, as well as thinking about what kinds of policies end up getting promoted and who becomes the scapegoats or the sacrifices in terms of achieving certain policy goals. But either way, there obviously anti-Blackness is very core to the work and what you're struggling to fight and dismantle. So people could answer that question. And just to add another one that has been posed, which is kind of the flip side of that question, is how can we build solidarity between Black immigrant organizations and whether we're talking about African, Afro-Latinx, other organizations intersectionally to build up the power of Black communities here in the US. So I'll open that up. Anyone who'd like to answer?
I'd like to start by commenting on some, bringing up about immigrants from Honduras, and then, segue to the questions. I think that when we are talking about immigration, one of the issues that is oftentimes left out, that we oftentimes fail to address, are the root causes of migration. Because oftentimes, some of the policies that are crafted here by US administrations and policymakers here have a direct impact on countries like Honduras, Haiti, other countries in Central America, Latin America, that forced people to leave everything they know to come here. And then when they come here, they are treated like criminals. And I think that we more and more, we need to address these issues, because in the case of Haiti, for example, for the past few months, there have been grave human rights abuses being committed in Haiti. The young folks have been taken to the streets to protest widespread violence and abuses, statewide spread violence and abuses. And they are frustrated. The young leaders of Haiti are frustrated because they realize that their cause has been hampered, right, by the Trump administration's support of the government in Haiti. And when we look at past administrations, such as the Clinton administration, for example, how his administration systemically flooded Haiti with rice from Minnesota, because oftentimes they promise this, I'm not going to call them poor nations, but nations that are where there's a big gap between the have and the have-nots, because these nations oftentimes they are rich in resources. The biggest issues that people face is because there is such a big gap between the haves and the have-nots, where we have 1% of the population in Haiti, commanding most of the resources, and then you have the rest of the country living in misery. So when the Clinton administration flooded the Haiti with this rice from Minnesota, what happened to the farmers? They are unable to, cultivate their land. They are unable to feed their families. They move to the capital. They find other ways out, and a lot of them, they go through, different, countries, to Brazil, to 9 different countries to get here. When they get here, their basic rights of due process are not being respected. So I think that more and more we need, when we are engaging in talking about immigration, we need to make sure we address the root causes of migration. Now, in terms of what can we do together? How can we organize better to support those immigrants who are coming, first of all, the refugees who are coming to the border right now, right, who are being prevented from coming in. There used to be, well, when refugees come here, we afforded them the basic rights of the process. We create a space for them to come and state why they are leaving. They are coming from Africa, they come from China, wherever they are coming from. But guess what? Now they don't even have this chance. They are stopped at the border. Children are being ripped from their parents. And now, as we speak, there are 500 children who've been ripped from their parents, and then they are unable to locate them. So the judges have no discretion whatsoever, and even refugees who've been released from detention centers from around and from California and from San Diego and others, and they come to our communities now. They have this monitors, the shackled like in times of slavery. They are unable to seek employment, and then when they go, it used to be when they go to supervision, they used to be able to come back to their families, but now when they go to supervisions, they may go in the morning and then end up in the detention center. The judges have no discretion. So I think that we need to coordinate our efforts to make sure that the basic rights of due process of refugees are restored, and that discretion, that the judges are empowered, right? They are empowered to make decision and then implement the law, right, as it was written, as it was supposed to. But then again, we know that elections have consequences, and if there is a change in the administration, right, we have to. We tell our members here that we have to plan for the best and prepare for the worst, right? We have to find ways to protect our refugees, to protect their basic rights of due process. We have to find ways to do that. And we also have to find ways to go to court, not only organize on the ground, but also go to courts to fight back. Because I don't know if you realize that the Trump administration, and per his own words, they've been packing the courts. They've been packing the courts. They've been filling, by November, they would have filled all 13, in the case of federal judges, for example, they would have filled all 13 by November. By November. So we have to link our struggles to find ways to protect our members. And while listening to my other friends on the panel, I think that one issue that resonates, that where I see synergy, is for comprehensive immigration reform, because we are organizing to protect, to find a permanent solution for the 300,000 TPS recipients. We are organizing to protect the basic rights of the 800,000 dreamers who are as American as apple pie, who were brought to this country to no fault of their own. And a group that is oftentimes forgotten, even by Democrats, because they are too scared to raise that issue, is the case of the 11 to 19 million undocumented of this country, who are working hard, paying taxes, contributing to build the social, economic, and political fabric of this great nation. We oftentimes leave them out because we are too scared. I was watching the debate, and I'm listening to our friend Joe Biden. He talked, yes, he said that in the next 100 days, he'll bring comprehensive immigration reform, and he talked about the dreamers, and he left out TPS. I said, why the heck? When you were in Miami recently, you claimed that you were going to protect the TPS recipients, and then you are part of the debate where the nation is listening to you, right? And then you leave a group out because you feel too scared to stand up for this specific group. So together, right, we need to fight for comprehensive immigration reform. We need to fight, we need to organize, unite our strengths, right? To fight for comprehensive immigration reform. Then we won't have to talk about the 300,000 TPS recipients from Haiti, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Sudan, and other African nations. We don't have to talk about the 800,000 dreamers. We don't have to talk about the 11 to 19 million undocumented. The immigration system is broken. It must be repaired, right? And the way we will do this is together, in one voice, we stand up and then raise our collective voices. We march to Congress together. We take to the streets together to say that these immigrants, they've been keeping their hands off the bargains days in and days out in this nation. The TPS recipients, for example, they contribute billions of dollars in taxes. When we talk about the 11 to 19 million undocumented, they are immigrants from Mexico who have been here for 40, 50 years, guys, living in an undocumented status. From El Salvador, the same way. This is unacceptable. While listening to my brothers and sisters here, I see one specific issue that I think we, whether Biden is elected, whether Trump is elected, that's one issue that we need to stand up and advocate for, is for comprehensive immigration reform. Because I've been to conferences, national conferences, where people are saying, oh, if we advocate for this, then we will lose this. We must stiffen our backbone to stand up and ask for what we deserve. The immigrants are here, they are contributing, they are paying taxes, they are part of our essential workers, and I'm going to end on that note. Even in the midst of the pandemic, guess which group did not have the luxury to stay home? Guess who? Guess who? The immigrants. They were in the farm in Homestead picking our tomatoes without any type of protective gears. They left their children at home alone while school was out to make sure that we have access to good food, to fresh vegetables, even when they live in spaces where there's food desert. They are picking tomatoes, and yet, unless they bring some, rotten tomatoes from the farm, from Homestead, when they go home, they don't even have access to fresh food because they live in communities where you have liquor, like where we are now in Little Haiti. There are 2 liquor stores in less than 10 blocks, and not even one good supermarket where families can buy fresh foods and vegetables. So I think that in the case of immigration, we need to stand up and organize for comprehensive immigration reform. We must address systemic root causes of migration, of course, systemic racism too, root causes of migration, because we need to stare at Americans in the eyes, dead in the eyes, and say, we are here in America because you were there in our countries.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Amaha, Nana, would you like to have the last word as we close out? And the code again for CLE is blue.
I'll take the chance to transition to one of the other questions that we didn't get to from a brother in France, asking about organizing immigrants as workers and not just around immigration policy. I think it's a really essential task for the immigrant rights movement, including Black immigrant led organizations like ours. So many of our struggles take place in the workplace. Some of the things my organization has been doing, we've been organizing African women who are hair braiders in New York City to challenge licensing laws that cut them off from the ability to earn a living doing what is their legacy, cultural heritage, which is hair braiding. We've been organizing predominantly Ethiopian airport workers in the DC airports to raise the wages for one of the largest employers of African immigrants in the country. And we're also organizing among excluded workers, excluded from relief because they are undocumented, excluded from getting unemployment or other forms of COVID relief and assistance that we all desperately need. So I just wanted to appreciate that question and the reminder that we need to be thinking about immigrants as whole people, not just as in relation to their legal status, but as workers, as tenants, as consumers, as family members, as whole people. And wanted to thank my fellow panelists for a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you all. I know that everyone here has to run to the middle of the struggle right now. And we hope that those of you listening will reach out to these organizations to support them. If you're in their area, to reach out for what you can do to help. And of course, to donate to the organizations to keep funding this amazing work. And thank you all to the panelists for everything that you're doing to achieve what we hope we will see. And a better future in our lifetimes. So thank you all, and I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for such a powerful panel. We're in solidarity with all of you. You shared such powerful and heartbreaking words in the panel, and we recognize that every time you share these experiences, you relive the trauma that you have experienced and that your communities are continuing to experience. So the importance of this conversation cannot be understated. So thank you again so much.